Guys, how is everybody doing? We are closer to Ghostbusters Frozen Empire this weekend, and I also reviewed Ghostbusters yesterday. So, with that, here are my thoughts on Ghostbusters 2. Now, I want to talk about a little history with this movie when it comes to me in the movie. Now, I have like a really weird relationship with this movie. Growing up, I never watched this movie. I would occasionally put it on, but for some reason, I would always fall asleep. Every time someone would put on this movie, I would just say, I want the first movie. I don't want to watch the second movie. I would just want to watch the first movie. And I remember to this day, I bought both Ghostbusters 1 and 2 with my dad because my mom ended up losing my DVDs of the movies. And so we bought them both, but I would just continuously rewatch the first movie, but I would never put on the second movie. And the first time that I put this movie in and finished it from beginning to end was when Ghostbusters Afterlife was coming out back in 2021 in November. That was the first time that I fully watched the movie fully from beginning to end. And when I first watched it, I thought it was pretty bad, and I did not like it at all, really. Now, it's been almost 3 years now. It's only been 2 years, technically. But almost 3 years later, I finally rewatch it with a new one coming out. So, have my thoughts changed on it? Do I have the same feelings on this movie? Or do I see it as a totally different movie? Or maybe, just maybe, do I prefer it over the first movie? But let's talk about Ghostbusters 2. Starting off with my positives on Ghostbusters 2, and some that I do have on this movie before I really get into my negatives and I really talk about this movie. And I do think the comedy in this movie is still good. Now, I think the comedy in the first movie is much better because that's when it was like the early 80s. That's when all those guys were in the prime of their careers, and I just felt the comedy's better in that one. But I do think the comedy carried from the first movie is carried over here pretty well. Now, I will admit the comedy is not as good as the first movie. I don't think it's really as close as the first movie because if you ask me, Bill Murray in that first movie, he was hilarious. I thought you could tell that he improvised a lot of his lines because if you watch behind the scenes, you see that he improvised most of his lines. But in this movie, it just doesn't really feel like that. In a way, it kind of just felt like Bill Murray didn't even want to be there. He just wanted to get the day over with, get his paycheck, and just go home. It didn't really feel like that when it came to Bill Murray in this one, because you kind of tell there was like a downgrade in the comedy because Bill Murray didn't even feel like he was having fun with this one. But anyways, I do think there are a few good scenes, mainly when it came to Ray and like Egon. It really between those two, this movie, they were both pretty funny in this movie. And Sigourney Weaver, I thought she was really funny in this movie. With like when it because she has a kid now, and she was pretty funny in this movie. But yeah, excuse me, the comedy in this movie, I still think it's pretty good. I don't think it's anywhere close to the first movie though, but it's still solid. But it's still just not perfect like the first movie was. The next positive is I do think the effects in this movie are still pretty good to where I think the effects aged pretty well. And it mainly came when like the Statue of Liberty in this movie, like the part where they bring the Statue of Liberty to life and have it walking around to save the day. And it's like walking around to where you could tell it's like somebody in like a bodysuit and like they're like walking around like a miniature town to make it look like the Statue of Liberty is tall and all that. And like they get close up of the feet when it's walking around, and you can just tell that it's people wearing like green sandals and their feet painted green. You can clearly tell it's that, but the effects are great. I think that the ghosts still look great. I think Slimer kind of looks a little better in this movie, but it still looks a little silly if you ask me. But anyways, I think the effects in this movie they still hold up like the first movie. They're maybe just a little bit better because this movie did come out 5 years later. Technology did change a lot a few years. God, I just popped my back there. That hurt. And yeah, the effects. God, what is going on with my throat? The effects in this movie, they still hold up. They're great in this movie. I think that it mainly came with like the Statue of Liberty. I thought that really good for especially for 1989. Yeah, the effects in this movie they're great. Now moving on to my negatives. I will fully admit it was kind of hard to find any positives towards this movie because I'll get to that soon on why I struggled with it. But anyways, my main issue with this movie is that in a way it pulls an Alien 3. And no, I don't want to hear that one douchebag in the comments going, well, actually, the Ghostbusters 2 came out before Alien 3, so you should be saying it pulls a Ghostbusters 2. I don't want to hear that. I don't, because if that one asshole comments that, I'm going to come after you, because I don't want to hear it, because everybody compares it to this. What I'm about to talk about, everybody compares it to Alien 3. Alright? Just because both movies have Sigourney Weaver in it doesn't mean anything, okay? We good? Okay. So what this movie does is basically just pulls an Alien 3. You get the great happy ending of the first movie. The Ghostbusters save the town, everybody loves them, they're cheering for them. Ghostbusters save New York! And Peter and like Venkman and sort of Sigourney Weaver's character, they kiss at the end, they fall in love, but then this movie comes around and it undoes everything. They treat the Ghostbusters like jokes instead of heroes. Uh, Pinkman and Sigourney Weaver, they end up breaking up in this movie, and she went off and married this other guy that we've never met. We do not see him anywhere in this movie. He is only briefly mentioned throughout the movie. So basically, the kid that she has in this movie might as well be Vinkman's throughout the entire movie. And just they also have like this weird joke in this movie to where they're treating the Ghostbusters like a joke, to where Ghostbusters are going to 6-year-old birthday parties and doing shit for them. And the kids that are 6 years old that should be entertained by this, they do not even treat the Ghostbusters serious. And there's even like a meta joke during that scene to where they play the Ghostbusters theme. It didn't bother me, mainly because I kind of forgot about that until I kind of before prep for this review. So that alone, it's like, well, what the fuck are you guys doing? And then they just do all that. They just basically pretend that the first Ghostbusters just didn't exist. That everything that movie left on a good note on, they just come around and was like, screw that. Let's just redo everything. And it's like, well, what the fuck? I really did not care for any of the villains in this movie. None of them are really interesting. Why am I touching my hair so much? Don't you hate that when it comes to your hair? I need a haircut. Anyways, but the villains in this movie, they're pretty bland, especially compared to the first movie, which has the Marshmallow Man, Slimer, the dogs in the first movie. Like you get all of these great villains in this first movie. And it's like, okay, I'm excited to see what they do. What do you got? Pink ooze, an evil painting that's apparently gonna come out of the painting at the end of the movie, and a guy that's really weird and corny and has the hots for Sigourney Weaver.
What do you look? Can you do something? You say no, I can't do something. You know what? Do I have a bad breath or something?
You serious?
That's what they give us. And that painting, dude, that thing has come iconic because it's treated as a joke. That is the only reason that poster or that painting or whatever the fuck you want to call that thing became so iconic because it's treated as a joke. And like the end of this movie, this painting has been built up throughout this. Excuse me. This movie built up that painting as like this big villain throughout the beginning and to the end of this movie, from beginning to fucking end, saying how this guy is going to destroy the world, that he's going to treat you all like flies. And it's like, ooh, this guy sounds cool. And what does he do? He comes out of the painting, takes the baby, like makes make the Ghostbusters not able to move, and then he takes the baby. They shoot him with their blasters. He goes back into the painting. He takes control of Ray for like 10 seconds, and then he's back at the painting, and then he disappears forever. That is how he's taken out. And he's only the main villain for about 10 minutes. They did that man dirty, and it's like, what what are you doing? And the main villain that they focus on, which I'm kind of glad that they did, because they should have just took it out the whole painting villain shit going on in this movie that really did not even need to be in this movie, if you ask me. And then you get like this pink ooze that's apparently control that kind of is alive by hate, kind of. by hate and anger, really. That's what it feeds off. But when everybody's happy, it just doesn't do anything. But when you're angry and unhappy, and this thing starts to foam up, and then ghosts pop out of it. That is the ooze. Now, one, I'm kind of glad that's the main focus of this movie. I would have preferred if that was just the main focus through and through the entire movie. And then you also got this goofball that has the hots for Sigourney Weaver that does jack shit in this movie. I may say, because he has the hots for Sigourney Weaver, and he only has like 2 minutes of screen time, and he's there to be like this weird wacko that's treated like garbage throughout this entire movie. He's like the painting's little bitch throughout the entire movie. It's like, well, why are you here? Well, what's your purpose? My main negative about this movie, and this has to do what I said that I kind of struggled finding new positives for this movie or to talk about other positives. This was the reason why. This movie follows the first movie beat by beat by beat. You get the guys that are not popular. People don't take them serious, but then they save the day. They capture some ghosts. Everybody loves them. People are calling them left and right. They're making bank. They're doing people justice. They're saving people. And then Bill Murray and Sigourney Weaver start going out again. They start falling in love. Then you got this dickhead that doesn't like the Ghostbusters, wants them thrown in jail, gets them in jail, but then the mayor takes them out, has them save the day, fires the guy that threw them in jail, and they came to save the day. Deja vu, anybody? Does anybody remember this? No? Me neither. It's a totally original story, right? It's as if that it angers me too because you got everybody, everybody that was involved with that first movie. You got Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd returning to write the movie. You got Ivan Reitman returning to direct. You got the entire cast. You got the main cast, side characters, and everybody to come back for this movie, to do this movie justice. And it's like, we got everybody back. Everybody. Every single name that was on the poster of that first movie is on the poster of the second movie. And you think that this movie will be on par, if not just a tiny, teeny bit better than that first movie. But it's not. It's like you go to a restaurant and you get this meal that you absolutely loved. It had all this amazing ingredients. It had everything that you could possibly want. Everything that you love. But then you go there for a second time. You go there for one more time. You try it a second time. You get the same exact meal. But this time you have it has the same ingredients. You got the same things. It was cooked the way it was last time. But it turns out mediocre. That is what this movie does. Same steps. Same steps as the first movie. Same creators, but with a different movie that felt like nobody gave a shit about this movie with a very mediocre movie. That is how this movie feels, following beat by beat from the first movie. All in all, guys, I don't hate Ghostbusters 2. I don't think it's a horrible film at all. I think it's a very mediocre sequel, especially every name involved with this movie. Everybody coming back to make the same people that made the first movie a masterpiece, coming back to make a second movie. This movie should have been better. It is not one of the worst sequels I've ever seen. It's just one of the most disappointing sequels I've ever seen. And in a way, I kind of blame this movie for putting the Ghostbusters franchise in limbo, because you got that 2016 version that made everybody mad, and then for years we did not get Afterlife until 2021. And I kind of blame this movie for that, but thankfully we got new Ghostbusters movie, so we don't really have to acknowledge this movie anymore. This movie, just especially for everyone involved, it should have been better. What do you guys think about Ghostbusters 2? Have you seen it? What do you think about it? Do you actually prefer this over the first movie? Do you always prefer that first movie like I do? Do you actually think this is a good follow-up to Ghostbusters? Let me know in the comments below and we shall talk about it. And if you like this video, like it. If you love it, subscribe and hit the bell notification so you will get notified for my latest videos. And of course, until my next video, I will see you all next time.